according to this message in the Spawn of Liberty Falls, Eddie is a liar. But who is Eddie and what did he lie about? Today, I'll answer both of those questions by linking it to an Easter egg hidden in Call of Duty Zombies over 5,000 days ago. And even if you're a big fan of the Zombies storyline, I still think you're going to learn quite a bit here. So let's dive into the Zombies history books and start sort of setting the scene for us to be able to answer these questions effectively. So to start with, this isn't the first time we've seen a variation of this phrase, Eddie is a liar. It's actually a long-standing running theme through the entire Zombies story, but the first ever incarnation of it came all the way back during Call of Duty World at War, where we had the first ever Zombies map release, Nacht der Untoten, and then just a few months later, we had the first ever DLC release, which was Verrückt. And Verrückt is a creepy map. Like, just have a listen here. It's unsettling. You don't feel safe at any time. There's a lurking sense of horror and dread inside the walls of the asylum. And so with that aura and that ambience wrapping you up and pushing you through the map, you go through that first door, you walk past your little Thompson wall by, you start going up those stairs, and you're like, okay, I'm getting to grips with how twisted and messed up this place is. And then you cross by that little rattly fence that always makes that noise as soon as you go past it. And as you approach the speed cola machine here, you notice that in the room behind Speed Cola, there appear to be markings and scrawlings of text all over the walls. And as your eye kind of dances around everything that's there, all the drawings, all the symbols, all the pictures, all the words, you'll notice that nestled amongst all of it is a message that says, Teddy is the biggest liar. So it's not identical to Eddie is a liar, but it's our starting point here. Also written on the wall are dozens of other cryptic messages, hints, even codes written in the Illuminati's very own ciphertext. So there's a massive amount of zombie story lore packed into those walls, but I'm not going to go into detail about all the other stuff in this video, but if you guys really want me to and you leave a comment, I could do that in a separate video. But for now, we're just going to focus on that central phrase, right? Teddy is a liar. So let's establish some facts about Verrückt. It's the first map where the mystery box can move, and previously on Nacht der Untoten, you don't get a Teddy in the box because it's not got anywhere to go, whereas on Verrückt, the box does move, and so you start getting your Teddy in the box. So is this a reference to the fact that the Teddy in the box is a bad thing, and that's the sort of Teddy lying? Like, is that what it's trying to signify? And if so, that would kind of work alongside the fact that there's this symbol of the Teddy on the wall, right? So you've got this kind of anti-Teddy symbolism, and you've got these messages saying that Teddy is the biggest liar. But then you start to think, hold on, what's the sort of psychology of the person writing this? Is this a child or an adult? Is this a crazy person or a sane person really trying to get a message out? And who's been on site in the Verrückt Asylum prior to our arrival as our 4 Marines that would leave a message like this and leave the message in this way? And if we look at all of the wall writing here, does it feel juvenile? Does it feel sort of nonsensical? And all things considered, obviously, it's meant to look like the writings of a crazy person, but I don't think it's meant to just look like the teddy bear in the mystery box quite literally is lying to this person. I actually think there's something a lot darker and a lot more mysterious that's going on here. So to lay the groundwork for the theory I want to tell you guys today, we need to explore a little bit more of the backstory of Verrückt and also of the following maps that came out that year, Shi No Numa and Riese. So this asylum at Verrückt wasn't just a normal asylum, but it was actually a Group 935 facility. The asylum was based in Berlin, and the German government turned it into a facility for 935 because they needed additional sites and additional funding due to the aspirations they had for their experimental research, which involved creating wonder weapons and also involved trying to create a zombie army that they could then teleport in to attack other neighboring nations and things like that.
Early tests on the DG2 have easily outperformed expectations, and we fully anticipate mass producing the Wunderwaffe within the next few years. I am of course available for discussion on the matter, but in the meantime, I will continue with the work here and tried to win this damned war.
Typical stuff that you'd expect from the Germans during World War II. Now, as you can imagine, the Americans were also trying to pay attention to what the Germans were up to with these weird experiments, and so they sent in spies to try and infiltrate Group 935, and one of those spies was a guy called Peter McCain. And Peter's story is pretty tragic, and we won't go into too much detail about it here because it's very interesting, but again, it's a topic for another video. But he successfully infiltrated Group 935, which initially was a great success. Like, that's a big deal, but then he was transferred to the Asylum facility and then shortly after was captured, so they found out that he was a spy. Now, luckily for Peter, he ended up being able to escape because the outbreak started at the site very quickly after that. And so Peter fled, and again, if you're kind of familiar with your zombie story, you'll know that he met his grisly end in Shi No Numa. And sure, Shi No Numa has some pretty in-depth zombie story stuff associated with it that we could go into today, like the doctor's quarters and Richtofen's diary and things along those lines. But all we're going to focus on here is a message that you can hear playing in the spawn area. It's one of the most iconic pieces of audio in all of Call of Duty Zombies, in my opinion, and I'm going to play you an excerpt from it now.
I hope you're receiving this transmission, Peter. If you are not, then all is already lost. You must know by now that we failed to contain the Asylum. Now we have to move the experiment here. Find Dr. Maxis. They may know what's going on. The use of Room 115 is dangerous and fast. I'm not sure we can continue here. I hope you get this. I hope it hasn't happened there too. But I'm almost out of hope.
So it's confirmation that the Asylum has been overrun, and it's a message to find Dr. Richtofen and Dr. Maxis. Now, this is interesting because in terms of the unfurling of the zombie story, map to map through World at War, we had never heard of those characters before. In fact, they didn't exist prior to Shi No Numa. And so we know now that they're an authority on this mysterious Element 115, but we don't know much more about them. And we need to move forward to the next map in World at War, that's Riese, in order to truly unpack this backstory.
Power levels critical.
No power. Weak.
So let's just ground ourselves on Riese for a minute from the player's perspective when we spawn in. The player, first of all, is probably just a bit blown away by how far Zombies has come compared to where it was at the start of the game with Nachtoran Toten. That was just a plain bunker with not a lot happening, whereas now we're in a German research facility in the heart of the Second World War, doing secret experiments with UFOs and aliens and all sorts of crazy teleportation and maybe even time travel. So we have stepped the game up in a big way. And as you begin to explore the map, you start to really get a sense that there is a huge amount of backstory here that we don't yet understand, but perhaps through some careful examination of radios and audio logs left behind by the site's previous inhabitants, we might be able to unpack not only the story of what the hell's going on here, but also how it connects to this phrase that's been teased to us, Teddy is the biggest liar. And we are getting back to that, I promise. The big brain theory is coming full circle here, so stick with me and we'll get into the details now. So the events of Riese really take place in the 40s, but let's rewind just 10 years or so to give a little bit more context here. The reason the facility is where it is that there's large deposits of Element 115 that are discovered near that location. And it's Dr. Ludwig Maxis who is originally tasked with going to figure out what to do about it. When he starts researching 115, he realizes this is a much bigger operation than just a one-man research project. And so he starts bringing in top scientists from all around the world to try and pool their resources, pool their knowledge, and tap into the potential of 115. Now, as part of that, they swear to hide their research from their respective governments, so this is separate to the Axis or Allied powers of World War II, but instead it's almost in the pursuit of knowledge to some extent. And at that point, this Richtofen guy was not part of 935. He hadn't entered the story yet, because at the time, rather than being a research scientist, Richtofen was busy being part of the Illuminati. I know that could be quite hard to understand because the Illuminati's not really talked about a huge amount in the zombie story, but he was genuinely part of the Illuminati. I'm not making that up. And it's the Illuminati that encourage Richtofen to join Group 935 when he's invited started by Dr. Maxis in the 30s. So like I said before, they're doing their research, they're doing their experimentation, they're trying to build wonder weapons, they're trying to build undead armies, all that sort of stuff. But I mentioned originally that they were trying to be non-partisan, like they weren't trying to align with a specific government, but the problem was that they started to run out of funding, and ultimately, the money had to come from somewhere in order for them to be able to continue.
Sophia, this letter is to go to the Reichstag High Command immediately. It is with the utmost urgency that I draw your attention to the lack of funding being injected into the giant project. Work on the matter transference has come to a standstill. This cannot be done if you cut the budget, nor can it be done if you insist on pressuring us into action before we are ready.
But this creates a rift, right? You've got scientists from all over the world who are all there for various different reasons, but their initial thesis, their initial founding philosophy was to hide it from their governments and not let it fall into the wrong hands, right? That power could be very, very corrupting if given to the wrong person. And so as Maxis starts conversing with the Reichstag High Command and trying to get funding from Germany, Richtofen starts to worry that that's going to compromise the group. And so his faith in Maxis begins to wane a little bit, despite the fact that he very much sees Maxis as a father figure in some capacities to him. He just really is not into the idea that all of this is just going to be used by Germany and that's going to be that. Like, he's got almost grander aspirations here. And as part of that, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot here, but I don't want this video to be 7 hours long, and it really could be if you let me yap for that long, so I'm going to hold back. But as part of that, Richtofen basically becomes more corrupted by this ancient apothecon alien force that's still lingering in the universe that twists his mind, and it puts him on a path to start acting on behalf of those alien interests rather than his original noble scientific research interests that he held so close to his heart when he got started. Now, there were also the interests of the Illuminati to be thinking about, like we said before, but he actually leaves the Illuminati in 1940, and when asked about why he's done that, he quotes a phrase that will be familiar to you watching this video, which is, "Teddy was a liar." So there, for the first time, Richtofen is referring to himself as Teddy, seemingly. So we're no longer focused on that teddy bear in the mystery box. We're no longer thinking about this being a simple hint to the player that if you get a teddy, it means that you got unlucky and now the box is going to move. But actually, it's maybe a nickname that he calls himself, and that's going to come back in a moment. So Richtofen's mind and aspirations and goals are now completely corrupt, right? But from Maxis's perspective, things are kind of fine, except he starts to notice that there are some changes in Richtofen's personality, but he doesn't fully understand what those changes are related to. And so, being a man who had a job to do, Maxis just gets on with things, and he continues his experimentation with teleportation with Richtofen by his side.
Initiating test number 3. Subject is within the test chamber. Activate power. Oh my God. Do you hold yourself and clean that up? Test number 3. Unsuccessful. Test subject has been reduced to the same state as previous subjects. Clean up the test chamber and recalibrate the system. Let's do it again. Yes, Doctor.
As you can hear, the tests are not super successful. There's a lot that is not going right. And this gets more and more stressful as time passes because now the Reichstag are involved and they want results. So Maxis starts dedicating more and more of his time to solving this problem. And that means that his family actually end up being on site so he can just work 24/7. And his family at this point is comprised of him and his daughter, Samantha Maxis. Now, Samantha is a very young child at this point, and unfortunately her mother died in childbirth, so there's nobody else to look after her other than occasionally Edward Richtofen. And so Maxis thinks, well, seeing as I'm doing all this research on the Riese facility and on these wonder weapons, etc., I might as well do something to keep my daughter happy, and so he gives her a puppy.
Now, you must be very diligent, Miss Samantha. Owning a dog is a great responsibility.
Yes, Father. Oh, I love her.
You must feed her every day and walk her, and be very careful when you play with her. You know she's going to have puppies.
Really? Can I keep the puppies too, Father?
We'll see, Samantha. One step at a time.
It's a nice gesture, right? But as you can imagine, in desperate times where they're running out of test subjects, they're running out of Element 115, they're running out of funding, and they're running out of time, things might understandably start getting a bit desperate. And so in a bid to try and succeed in one of the teleportation trials, they actually decide to put the dog in the teleporter.
Edward, tie the damn thing down! We can't have it running around during the test!
It's tied down now, Dr. Maxis.
Initiating test number 5. Subject is within the test chamber. Activate power.
Searching for vitals. No reading, Doctor. The subject has disappeared. Dr. Maxis, we've done it!
Don't be foolish! Test number 5 is unsuccessful. Subject has vanished, yes, but has not reappeared at the mainframe. Recalibrate the damn system, now!
As grotesque as it is to say, weirdly, this was kind of progress for them, because in their previous tests, they had no disappearance of subject, they just had a dead subject, whereas now, the dog had disappeared. So, they redoubled their efforts.
Initiating test number 6. Subject is within test chamber. Activate power. Damn it, Edward! Did you set up the device correctly?
Yes, Doctor. As per your specifications.
If you had done it to my specifications, then it would have worked, wouldn't it? As usual, your incompetence has...
What? Do you hear that, Doctor?
Quiet, you fool! Test number 6 is a failure, but the experiment has caused some kind of electrical force energized within the chamber. Well, open the door!
Doctor, I don't think...
Open the door, now!
Daddy, what are you doing with Fluffy?
Damn it, Samantha, I told you never to come in here!
This is a pivotal moment here in the zombie storyline. It's a successful teleportation trial with this hellhound, Fluffy, being brought back from the ether or wherever Fluffy went to, but there is now a problem because Samantha has been looking for her dog, and despite the fact that Maxis has said that she couldn't come in, she's disobeyed that rule in order to try and find her puppy.
Edward, get her out of here.
Yes, Doctor.
What's wrong with her? Daddy, what did you do? Fluffy!
Come back here, Samantha! Stop her! Easy. Come here, Samantha. Good girl, Flossie. Gently, Samantha. That's not Flossie anymore. We must get out of here. What?
Samantha has run inside the teleporter at this point to try and comfort her dog, but the sound that we heard at the end of the audio there was the door closing.
What? Edward, what are you doing? Open the door! Edward, open this door now!
I'm scared.
God, no! Stay by me, Samantha!
Goodbye, Dr. Maxis.
This is the beginning of Richtofen's grand scheme to follow the Apothicon corruption in his brain and go on his great quest for power. And it is an enormous betrayal of Maxis, both the man, Dr. Ludwig Maxis, and the daughter, Samantha. And in my view, it's really this that is the fundamental lie that Richtofen tells that sets everything else in motion in the zombie storyline. It's hiding things behind the back of Dr. Maxis and then double-crossing him and trapping Maxis in the teleporter and trapping Samantha in there, which leads to literally everything else. It causes the events of Moon, it causes the events of Origins, and it establishes this really fundamental key fact about Richtofen's character once he's corrupted by the Apothicons and the MPD, and that's that Richtofen is a liar. But it still isn't the only reference to Eddie being a liar that we need to pay attention to here. There's actually also another mention of it in Riese, and there's some future references of it that are even more important. So if you head up the stairs in Riese towards one of the teleporters, and you take a look outside here, you'll see that through this window, you can see the words "Teddy is a liar" written on the wall. Alongside it, you have the writing from Verrückt. And so that starts to make you wonder, okay, if the writing from Verrückt is here in the same style that it was on that map, does that mean that there is a person that was previously at Verrückt that was then at Riese? Could it have been that there was a test subject, for example, that was brought between the two sites? Or maybe it's even Samantha Maxis herself. But there's another character who's actually very close by to this writing who might give us some answers about what's going on here. So if you leave that little doorway and you pivot to the side of the building here, you can see some hanging legs. And we actually have a pretty good understanding of who this person is and why they are where they are and they've done what they've done. So if we zoom in here, you can see that there are some books open against this wall and there's more Illuminati code, which I'll leave to you guys to decode in the comment section as some homework, I guess. But the books are extremely interesting because one of them is open. It's a very rare instance actually where there's an open book in World at War that you can read all the pages of. And it talks about the instructions given to Group 935 members. And not only are those instructions about how they should continue their experimentation and their work day to day, but they're also what they should do in scenarios of extreme strife when things go wrong and ultimately if their research is about to fall into enemy hands. And the conclusion that the field manual comes to and it instructs the members to carry out is that they need to take cyanide pills in order to prevent the enemy from ever getting their hands on Group 935 research. And this leads us in to the radio, which tells us a bit more about the final moments of the man hanging from the roof.
But I'm all out of hope. Auf Wiedersehen, my friend.
Warning, the shield is now active.
Damn it!
Scientists
I can't find my pills.
designated materials and report to the barracks.
They are coming.
This is not a drill.
I must do what I must do.
The shield is now active.
God forgive us all.
How to destroy the designated materials and report to the barracks. This is not a drill. Warning, the shield is now active. How to destroy the designated materials and report to the barracks. This is not a drill.
So in the final moments of the Riese facility before the outbreak fully broke out, he scrambled around to try and find his cyanide pills, but recognized that they weren't going to be effective. And so, as the field manual instructed, he took matters into his own hands. Now, this man is H. Porter. He's instrumental to the original design of the upgraded ray gun. So when you pack a punch that ray gun for the first time, you'll see it's Porter's X2 ray gun. And he's following the Group 935 directive here to a T. But that means that he's pretty likely invested in Maxis's vision for the group, right? And so when Maxis is teleported away from Riese in the teleporter and everything starts to go wrong at the facility, it makes perfect sense that Porter would look around, see Richtofen laughing maniacally and go, you know what? That guy's probably responsible for all this. And so in those final moments, I think it's pretty likely that he might have left a final message to the world warning them of Richtofen's deception. And so he might have been the author of that note on the wall that said, Teddy is a liar. So we know Teddy, also known as Eddie, has lied about a huge amount of stuff and deceived Group 935 in order to try and put his own plan in motion. And Treyarch themselves didn't want us to trust Richtofen either. I mean, there's even a secret message in the World at War character bios released alongside Shi No Numa for the 4 characters, which has a hidden code in it, and it says the Doctor wants the ultimate power, bastard. So they're warning the player that the Doctor, Richtofen, isn't to be trusted. He's trying to get his hands on the MPD, just like we've already talked about. But there's still one more thing here that I think is the cherry on top of all this that actually brings quite a somber tone to Richtofen's story and his habit of lying. So let's fast forward on from Riese and we go through the events of Moon, and Edward uses username Teddy and password is a liar on the Moon computer terminals.
Login Teddy. Password is a liar. I'm not, but that's why no one would guess it.
And then we fast forward further still, we get all the way to Revelations, and at that point, having played through all of BO3 prior to it, we are then much more familiar with this Dr. Monty character, right? And Monty acts as this omnipotent, omniscient god in the zombie story who seems to just always have some kind of wisecrack to share, and he also tells us some interesting facts about the characters that we've never heard before. One of them is that Richtofen's favorite song is My Way by Frank Sinatra, and he wonders when he'll get get to sing it. Another is that Edward Richtofen has trouble sleeping without a teddy bear, and that's a problem that didn't present itself until he was an adult. But the most important quote of all is the following.
At the orphanage, Edward told everyone his dad was a famous scientist. They scrawled, "Teddy is a liar," on the schoolyard wall.
This totally reframes the way we think about Richtofen's lies. No longer does it entirely make sense to accuse him of just being manipulative or being self-serving, but actually this comes from a real place of pain when he's abandoned and on his own in this orphanage and clearly struggling to bond with the other children, and he's trying to share either a true story about who his parents really were, or just a fantasy to help him get through the day. The response that he is met with is just to be branded as a liar, and done so in a way that humiliates him, scrawling it on the walls, just like what would then keep happening for decades to come through the rest of his life as he was haunted by these wall chalks and this writing consistently reminding him that he was a liar, and no, his parents weren't famous scientists, but actually, he was an orphan who meant nothing to the world, and he was alone. And in this new universe now, right, the Dark Ether storyline, Edward Richtofen is still Edward Richtofen. He is one of 2 people only who made it out of that Ether universe, and he did so in his child form. It wasn't Dr. Edward Richtofen, it was the young boy who had already seen far too much. And he always, in that young form, was always referred to as Eddie, not Teddy. And so now, in the Dark Ether story, this Eddie has grown up to be Edward Richtofen once again, but in a slightly different light, right? In slightly different circumstances, but still at his core, he is Eddie, and he has an entire universe of Eddies on his shoulders, all weighing down on him and impressing upon him, upon his soul, this habit of lying that he simply cannot escape from. So with this now in mind, it's almost cruel to see that writing in the spawn of Liberty Falls, and to know how painful that must be for him, and for him to constantly feel like he is striving towards something that nobody else can understand, that there's a path that only he can walk, and he gets no sympathy from the world as he does so. And yet, as Richtofen always does, as he has from the very beginning, he alone will walk that path, because he's Edward Richtofen, and that's what he does. Now, if you'd like me to make more videos like this in the future, hitting the subscribe button is a great way to show me that there's interest, and on screen right now, I'll have some more Black Ops 6 Zombies theory videos that you can click through to gorge yourself on the Zombies storyline. I'll see you there.